Welcome to A Dram of Outlander. This is Desiree, your podcaster and the writer for ADramOfOutlander.com. For all things Outlander, from the Diana Gabaldon book series to the Starz TV series, and anything interesting that falls between. This is podcast episode 161, and we are discussing season 4, episode 410, The Deep Heart's Core, directed by David Moore and written by Luke Schelhaas. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Whew, that was quite an episode. I think the last two have basically headed out of the park. Have been so good and so deep. And it's not because they match perfectly. Even the last 3 episodes, right? Yeah, we'll go with that. It's not because they match perfectly in people's minds or expectations. It's because the heart and spirit is, I think, really there. And it just touches all the right places. From the music, man, the soundtrack is phenomenal this season. It is so moving, and it helps tell the story in a way that only a good soundtrack can. To the costuming and the subtle changes and the shifts in what they're wearing based on where they are on the ridge and who they interact with. Just all the pieces are really falling into place really well. And we only have 3 episodes left. Then we'll be waiting again for another, I don't know, year. 13 months, 14 months, but hey, if you get a quality production and happy actors, that's what matters. So here's my summary for this episode. Jamie teaches Brianna a valuable lesson. Roger continues to travel with the Mohawk. Claire offers Brianna a choice. Young Ian is smitten. Claire's at home in the garden. Homestead life thrives. Claire and Brianna play a missing game. A nightmare causes revelation. Where's Roger? Brianna rages. Punches and slaps are thrown. A plan is made. Jamie asks for a favor. Young Ian proposes. Everyone departs. Aunt Jocasta meets Brianna. Roger makes an escape. A buzzing calls to Roger. An anguished decision is being made. So I don't plan on covering the entire episode. Something really stood out to me on my second viewing, and I really had to sit with it for a couple of days. And what it dawned on me was that we really get to see the Fraser Fire in Brianna. We get to see her break loose, break free, be vulnerable, and kind of decimate everything around her. And I'll get into that as we go through. But we really get to see her. There's no hiding, no holding back, no stiff upper lip. Like, the containment field falls. And the other part of that is we get to see many shades of parenting. That's how I viewed this episode. When I really looked at it and saw how it pieced together and what was happening between Jamie and Brianna and Claire and Brianna, that's really where the focal point was in this episode. It was about parenting an adult child who's in a terrible circumstance. It's navigating new relationships. So that's what really called to my heart in this episode and really caused me to really look at it in detail. So there have been glimpses of the Fraser Fire and Brianna in the past couple of episodes, but tonight the emotional dam breaks and she lets loose. Following in her English parents' footsteps, she generally doesn't open up easily, but she can't seem to stop herself at any point in this episode. If you've ever been through a serious traumatic event or events, like Brianna was handfast with Roger, they finally saw each other, she didn't expect him to be there, they had sex, her first times, I guess, her first time plus others. Then they had a fight, he left. Hugely traumatic thing right there. Physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And then she's raped by Stephen Bonnet. And then she finds out she's pregnant. That's a lot of trauma. That's a lot for one person to handle. And for someone who's used to holding back, and yes, Kislina, I think, totally just nailed that observation, is that she was a product of her English parents' upbringing. And not only that, their dysfunctional marriage, where it looked like they had that stiff upper lip, but they really just didn't communicate well, because they fought sometimes when they were trying to communicate. Everything just exploded. And even though she heard that, she really didn't see the bulk of it. I mean, Claire has a deep fire to her, but she doesn't let everybody see it. She lets Jamie see it, like he draws that out in her. Frank could draw it out in her too, but for different reasons. So Claire tends to be very closed in as well until she's in an environment where she feels really safe or really threatened. It's one or the other. So sometimes in these kind of situations, emotions can't be held in regardless of intent, regardless of trying or wanting or needing. I remember being in a car accident when I was 20 years old. And I had gone through an intersection, a fairly busy intersection, busy time of day. And as soon as I went through the intersection, I saw in front of me there were two other cars stopped because I think it was an ambulance was trying to make a U-turn. So I stopped plenty of time because I wasn't going fast, but the car behind me, the driver, wasn't paying attention, and she basically stopped on me, pushing me into the car in front of me, to the car in front of them. But, you know, this service vehicle was able to turn around. So that event, even though I was not seriously physically injured, there was injury. And it took a few years to fully recover because of the things that were damaged. All the emotional things, all the little boxes I had put everything in my life, all those box lids came off. They flung all haywire. And it was a few years of really serious work. And it wasn't just the physical work of losing my voice, though I was a voice major, and really feeling terrible because I had whiplash and other kinds of soft tissue injury. But emotionally, it was such a difficult time, which turned into really wonderful things. I mean, it really made me do so much good work that needed to be done coming out of my upbringing. But it was really hard and it was really scary. So when I think of that, I think of all of Brianna's internal box lids flying off and emotional chaos ensues, and hopefully healing can begin for her, right? Like it did for me. I mean, these characters are written to be real people. They're not supposed to be other. They're not supposed to be fiction. And Brianna needs that ability to be able to heal. She does have trauma from her childhood that she didn't recognize. She has trauma from her mother leaving her and having her mother leave her, and her father Frank dying, and learning about Jamie. There's so much, and she was an only child. We don't know if she wanted siblings. I mean, she mentions in this episode it was nice to have a cousin because she never had anything like that. So we're kind of getting a peek inside of Brianna in a way that really looks at her psychological health and her spiritual health, as well as her physical health. And it's a lot for one person in her early 20s to manage. And that little thing of her traveling 200 years into the past and all these other things, right? That's really a lot for her to navigate. So Brianna's emotional transformation begins with her telling Jamie he must hate her because she's an unwed, pregnant, and so forth daughter. I feel this is more about her self-image and what she believes about herself than what Jamie thinks. Jamie, to his credit, expresses he doesn't hold her accountable for what someone else did to her. Before he jumps in and says she'll be wed before the baby comes, because, it's the culture of the time. Regardless, she is someone in the 20th, her historian, so she won't wed anyone else. It's really interesting that that was a key point that was put in, that everybody somehow believes that Roger returned to the 20th, that he wouldn't come finding her. Like, they never figured out where the Gloriana went. It would have been a really, really simple thing to see if the Gloriana went to other colonial ports or if the Gloriana returned to Scotland, or check ship manifest to see if Roger got on other ships, like in Wilmington or nearby ports. I mean, Fergus is in that area. Murtaugh was in Williams Creek, so it's not like people couldn't have checked on these things. So that's one of those weird kind of plot devices that is frustrating, but it doesn't really matter because the material that it was adapted from was also really frustrating. And instead of just assuming he went to the past, like, they couldn't decide which name he was using, or they assumed he was using Wakefield, when he clearly used Mackenzie when he talked to Brianna. And the bit in this episode where she hands Claire a sketch of Roger just made me giggle, because that again was a huge frustration a huge frustration point in the book, is that Brianna knows how to draw. And she never sketched a picture of Roger. She could have drawn 50 pictures of him, and those could have been their flyers when they were looking for him. So I will say, as a viewer, them having this hole that is annoying, it's simply because the plot surrounding Where's Roger is very annoying. There was no real fixing it. I think the writers did an excellent job adapting this part and making it as least annoying as possible. But if you're a persnickety viewer and you wonder, why in the heck did they just presume this? It's because in the book, it really was so much worse. And you want to yell at every single one of them for being so stupid in the book. Like, why are you not revealing this? And it went on for much longer. So she's determined not to wed because of Roger, regardless of where he is. So that really tells us about her truly deep feelings for him, and that she's not blaming him and she's not angry. And that somehow she understands why he left. Now, I think if he just was in front of her, she might have a different opinion. And maybe she has kind of rose-colored glasses to make herself feel better about it. Like we all want to do in hindsight, make things a little rosier. It's a self-protection, right? But that's really the depth of what she feels. So maybe somewhere inside of her, she really doesn't think he left and that he'll come back. or he wanted to come back. So Jamie is feeling her out and giving her parental space while being reassuring here. They have a very tenuous thread of da to daughter, right? To father, daughter. And Frank is daddy and Frank is father. So Jamie has to fit into this space and he has to fit himself. How similar is this to when somebody has a step-parent and the step-parent has to be the one to mold themselves, fit into the nooks and crannies, find the openings, create an environment that is open and sharing and protective and caring, but not smothering, not demanding. That's a very difficult place to be. And Jamie's never raised anybody. I mean, she came to him as an adult. And even though young Ian's been there, come on, he's not your typical teenager, right? And Fergus, he only had Fergus till he was, 10? And then Jenny raised Fergus like her own. So this is wholly new territory. And Leary's daughters, they were already older. And he was only around for a couple of years. And most of that, he wasn't even there. So this is his experience. And so somehow he's finding this intuitively in how to navigate being her father without being overbearing. And he's a big person. He's a big personality. He has a lot of opinions. He's passionate, right? So it's a big deal for him to step back and reel it in a little bit with her and give her the green light without being a bulldozer. So when Brianna begins talking to herself about how she is stupid and at fault because she didn't fight and should have known better than to follow him into a dark room, Jamie jumps in telling her it's not her fault, but she doesn't believe him. Now, he doesn't know she knows that he was raped by Blackjack Randall, and it was so much more than rape. I mean, seriously. He was tormented and damaged in lots of ways. But he doesn't know she knows that. But here's where those internal box lids are flying off. She can't not talk about it. That door was wedged open slightly just by him saying, "Oh, your mother told me what happened." And that little crack in the door, she can't help but be vulnerable. It's oozing from her. So Jamie's parenting style takes a dark turn for many, but demonstrating the truth is more impactful than telling it. He begins to taunt her, tells her maybe she's lying or she liked it. Her anger riles, and she goes to take a swing at him. He grabs her, placing her into a chokehold. And he tells her that he could just break her neck, and could she stop him? Like he could do anything he wanted to her, and she couldn't stop him. She takes his point and finally understands there's nothing she could have done to stop the man from harming her. That is powerful. And seeing it is very difficult. But Jamie's a man of action. Sometimes he's a man of words, but he's often a man of action. And this was his way of explaining to her the truth and reality of it. It didn't matter how much she fought, how much she tried, what she did. She could not have stopped the man from doing what he did. And I think that's a powerful message for anyone who's been assaulted or raped. It's about power. It's about getting what they want. And it was going to be had whether or not Brianna wanted it or tried to stop it. I love how they sit together, and he speaks into her what she is feeling. He sees it in her. She's feeling that she's a coward because she couldn't fight off a wolf. I loved that line. In my mind, this is a nod to the books, where Claire did in fact fight off wolves barehanded outside of Wentworth. But that was a different type of wolf than what Brianna was fighting. Brianna wasn't quite fighting the wolf of Blackjack Randall. But Stephen Bonnet is pretty bad. And he's pretty merciless. And he's completely mercenary toward his own wants and goals and needs. Those wolves that Claire was fighting was for her own life in a totally separate way. In her helplessness at leaving Jamie. So circumstances, again, not the same. He knows Brianna would have died at her attacker's hands had she fought, and he shares that with her. She would have been dead. Well, we know that. Bonnet totally would have killed her, hands down. And this is Jamie saying that before he knows who the attacker is. If somebody is going to do what he did, and thinking it was a negotiated payment, that she earned payment of that ring, yeah, that adds a whole nother level to Wolf, doesn't it? Brianna is in a state of vulnerability that can't sit by itself. She can't be alone in it. She can't stand it. So what does she do? She asks Jamie about his experience with Blackjack Randall because her mother told her about it. Kaplam! Smack, smack, right in Jamie's face. I mean, that's like throwing a bucket of cold and then scalding water on someone. That'll wake you up. That'll get a rise out of you. Did he fight back? Did seeking vengeance help? Did killing his attacker make him feel better or forget? Jamie took the questioning in stride. He's walking a fine parenting line, having his private pain sitting next to hers without judgment, only openness and wise guidance. He's years from that experience. Decades. It was horrible and marked him. Still has nightmares. It doesn't ever fully go away. And the way that they discuss this, and Brianna was looking for a fight in this because she was feeling so vulnerable and naked in the situation, in the conversation. Have you ever felt like that? Where you're feeling so vulnerable that you just want to go in the attack? You want somebody else to join you there? So instead of Jamie biting when she was trying to get a rise out of him, he counseled her. He talked to her. He told her in the end it didn't really matter. And as he looked across that field, and he gave Randall to God, and he thought he would die on that field with him. So ultimately, he had to give it up. He didn't say forgiveness yet. He didn't say any of that. But he had to let go because vengeance didn't really matter anymore. Even though, ultimately, he got it. And he was walking a fine parenting line because how brutal is that to sit? To sit with your own history exposed. To know that your wife told your daughter only because she had to share right? She had to share, and it's the first time she could talk about him to anybody. It's the only time she could really let those stories out. She never could tell anyone. And to have Brianna in her nakedness emotionally kind of throw that back at him, that's pretty harsh. And Jamie's response, a steadfast parent. Somebody who was willing to take that on because he cares about his child. Because his discomfort and his pain, they don't matter as much as what his child is going through. Have you ever done that for anyone? Put aside your own feelings, your own needs, your own wants, your own desires, and never to hold over their head, but because it was given and offered in love and it was never asked. And it may never even be seen or noticed. And that doesn't matter. It's because you willingly gave that to somebody else. And I think that's what Jamie did here. I think it was a conscious, loving response, even though he could have done so many other things and gotten very angry at her. He chose not to. So now we're seeing how he's choosing to parent. So the next level to Brianna's emotional breach is after a nightmare. A really beautiful nod to Jamie's nightmare in season 2 where Blackjack Randall is swapped from Claire. And this is where Brianna learns from Lizzie that Roger came to the ridge and was mistakenly beaten up and sent away by Jamie. Remember, her historian's not supposed to be in the 18th anymore. Nobody ever described who she was handfast to. Did Claire describe him to Jamie? Nope. Did Brianna describe him? Nope. The only person who had any description was Lizzie, because she knows what he looked like. And then when Brianna put 2 and 2 together, then she realized, where's Roger? Like, or what have you done with him? You know. The way she barges into the cabin is the bull in the china shop we expect. She yells, growls, slaps, says terrible things to Jamie, and generally commands the room. That is the Fraser Fire. She comes in, no holds barred, and has to do what she has to do. That's Jamie. That's Jenny. Those are the Frasers. And that's what we expect. And this is where we get to see, no matter what size someone is, taking charge of a space. And that's exactly what Brianna did. I mean, Murtaugh just got up and like boogied out of there. He was like, I'm going to go outside for a little bit. That was hilarious. He's like, I'm a no drama llama and I'm out of here. That's how it went. Jamie, being the adult and the parent, takes her tongue lashing. He takes her brutal words. He lets them absorb without turning on her. Even though some furniture is not so lucky, he is the Da. Even though she accused him of being a savage, of being a bastard, of not being like her father, who was a good man, who would never say such things. No, Frank probably wouldn't say such things, even if they needed to be said. We don't know. Though he could say some of those things to Claire without any problem. We don't know. I mean, Jamie was misguided in saying those things, for certain. And Brianna let him know that in no uncertain terms. He learns what parenting this daughter, a Fraser daughter, means during this moment. And Claire is just dumbfounded. All she can say a couple times is Bree. Because you don't get between it. You have to, give it its space. Otherwise, things can get really, really ugly and harmful. There's no altering her course or changing her opinion. Claire is the protective mother, yet is at a loss seeing her daughter unhinged. When Brianna goes beyond all measure and punches young Ian in the face. This is not who Claire knew as her daughter, with her daughter growing up. Now, mind you, Claire is very different in this environment as well. She's herself. She's whole. She's at peace. There aren't parts of her that are locked up into little boxes and spaces and held under chain and lock and key and all of those things just to keep them away. But she just sits there and she's completely wowed by the situation. This is not what she's used to seeing either. And to see Jamie's reaction and actually pulling back and taking it is really telling. Brianna is grown and claiming what is hers. She wants Roger back no matter how long it takes. She wants that oath. Last, she goes on to make her mother leave her because she doesn't trust young Ian and Jamie will get the job done because of their judgment and because Roger will need to see a friendly face and a doctor. I like how she throws that in. And he'll need a doctor. Because that's what really is going to make Claire go. She puts the pursuit of Roger in front of all else, even if that means her mama misses the birth of the baby while she is safe at River Run under Aunt Jocasta's care. All she can think about is Roger, getting Roger back from the Mohawk. And as they said, it's about a 700-mile trek to where their territory is. And they're already a week behind. That's a big deal. Even if they were only going 10 miles a day, they're still 70 miles behind, 80 miles behind. I mean, they don't know that Roger accidentally found a way to escape. And it's going to sort of slow them up maybe a day. I don't know. I don't know how long it'll take for those terrible trackers to get him. But we've really seen a complete shift in Brianna's emotional range, her emotional reach. We've seen her be seemingly immature, but it's not. It's everything that's been bottled up had to come out. And Jamie took the brunt of that. Absolutely took that. And for the most part, rightfully so. She shouldn't have called him a savage and shouldn't have called him a bastard. But her telling him that he has no right to be more angry than her, some of the people on the Drama of Outlander group didn't think that was appropriate for her to tell him what he should be feeling. But I think at that moment, her losses were so great. Him feeling more angry than her because of things that he did in his own guilt, and in a backwards way, he believes he allowed this to happen because he didn't take care of Stephen Bonnet in the first place, and they saved him. That should take the back seat to what Brianna's feeling. She has lost everything, and now she's not even sure if she can go back. And if she can go back, she has to decide to go back soon. But if she was going to go back soon, she would have to either travel to Jamaica or travel back to Scotland because they don't know about the standing stone that Roger found. They have no idea it's there, and it's not that far away. It's a week's journey. So we have a lot of conundrums here, but I think she definitely has a right to having this experience without other people's emotions and feelings interfering. Sometimes we just do. And Jamie can let that out elsewhere. Let it out with Claire, and they can hash it out outside of Brianna. Because he does have things to work through in this scenario. But they have to do with him more than they have to do with her, except for how he's feeling about the things that happened to her. So in mentioning shades of parenting, I have to address Claire offering Brianna a surgical abortion. It's a tender and most gentle offering. Though we don't get the background in the show, Claire referred patients who sought an abortion to other doctors in the books. She couldn't do them because she could feel the life force of the fetus. She's a healer. You know, she has that skill to kind of zone in on anything that's going on in the body. And that's how one of the ways she recenters herself as she kind of goes through all her internal systems. Well, that's something she learned from Master Raymond. So in putting her hands on even an early pregnant woman's body, putting it over her uterus or her belly, she could feel that. She could tune into the fetus. So she didn't do them. She didn't judge people. She knows people make decisions for all sorts of reasons. It was nothing about her taking a stance of it's wrong. It was her taking a stance because she felt them. She felt that new being. And so I felt it was important to address that because of that scene. Now, a lot of people don't think it's any big deal that she offered her an abortion. But you have to remember, Brianna was brought up Catholic. She left before they were legal in the United States. They're in a time period where, of course, women took herbs. They did all the things. But it was not talked about. It was considered extremely verboten. And think about Claire offering that. How is Jamie going to respond when he knows that she offered it? Like, how is he going to deal with the fact that Claire offered it? It doesn't matter that Brianna said no. For her to offer the choice to Brianna by her own hand is a very big deal to Claire as a mother and as a physician. When Brianna asks Claire if she considered it, meaning with her pregnancy, Claire was astonished and horrified at the thought. This squeezed my heart for Brianna to get that reassurance and the truth from her mama. Like Brianna would have understood. But I think knowing that Claire never even considered it for herself may have something to do with Brianna's own decision ultimately. And it not only speaks volumes about how Claire felt about the baby she was carrying and Jamie, but I think how she trusted Frank even though she tried to send him away when she got to the 20th. There had to be something in her that knew he would accept her and accept the baby. Even though she fought it and she didn't want to be there. There's something in her, and people ask all the time, why does she still wear Frank's ring? Because there's more to it than just falling out of love with someone. Because having those bonds and having that trust is deeper than something simple. It's deep and it's meaningful. And so I really wonder about that. I like to think so. I mean, and Jamie trusted Frank. Jamie didn't know Frank. But Jamie trusted Frank based on what Claire told him. That shouts volumes to the character of Frank, even though he had no idea people were sizing him up that way or what would be expected of him. I like this vulnerable and fiery Brianna. I love this truly connected mother and daughter pair. For the first time, maybe ever, Brianna gets her mama as she really is and shares the pieces of her heart she long concealed in the 20th century. Claire is a mother that Brianna never knew. Now, because she's a whole person. She's not hiding something. She's not withdrawing into her work. She actually gets to see who her mother really is. Because it would have looked like to Brianna that Claire was married to her job. Her job was an escape. Being a physician is her calling, but she's so much more than that. She's not only a doctor. I mean, she loves being in her garden and taking care of the animals and doing things outside. Being in a hospital is the antithesis of being outside and tending to things that grow. I find hospitals to be oppressive. I don't like being in them at all. Even when it's totally necessary, I find them uncomfortable and they make me feel shut in. And I just want to go outside and get fresh air. So imagine how Claire had to focus herself in order to make that her sanctuary. And now Brianna gets this mother who's really free in herself and accepting of herself and just is. And she feels like a complete person. Though she misses flush toilets and cheeseburgers and music on demand. I loved their game of what I miss in the 20th century. The missing game. And Claire's also going to get a different daughter. Not just based on these really difficult experiences, but because Claire is different. Her daughter is going to be different. And she's going to get to see her in a fullness that she never saw because of how her life was in the 20th century. I think that's really beautiful. And I'm glad we're seeing this. I'm glad that Brianna's been chipped away to where we really get to see her. And Brianna and Jamie have a long way to go to repair and grow their relationship, but the seeds and foundation is there to be reaped when he brings Roger back. So, we're going on the assumption Roger's coming back. We believe Roger's coming back. If they're going to go on a trek, do you think they're going to spend 4 months up and back and come home with nobody? Ultimately, I don't think so. I think that would be terrible. So I have to say something about Roger, right? So it says, "Run, Roger, run!" The note about Roger is about his utter devotion to getting away from the Mohawk and back to Brianna. He's counting the days on a piece of material, making knots. He's taking note of geological formation and landmarks. He doesn't know they're supposed to be going hundreds of miles away. And the other prisoner, before he died, laughed at him. You're going to need a longer rope, right? I mean, Roger doesn't know. They don't tell him anything. They treat him like a dog. But ultimately, Roger accidentally escapes. And boy, oh boy, those Mohawks are bad trackers so far. Okay, so we have to suspend disbelief here. There is no way they wouldn't be able to smell or hear Roger. They are excellent trackers. They know how to find people and things, animals. He would not have gotten away so easily. So, we'll just pretend that they're terrible trackers. Or that because they're not used to being in this particular part of the country, they can't find him. Maybe Roger was... What? He was upwind of them? No. Downwind. So they couldn't smell him. I don't know. Is it obvious I'm not a tracker? But that he was the opposite direction of how the wind was going, so they couldn't scent him or hear him easily? Let's just go with that. That's where we were all, what? But Roger finds himself face to face with the standing stone we saw the ancient people dancing around in the first episode. He has the 2 gemstones in his hand that he got from Stephen Bonnet in lieu of payment. He is anguished and just in utter, visceral, emotional pain. You can feel it. And can escape this horrid reality right now if he wants to. We're left hanging as he reaches for the standing stone when the camera fades to black. Could he really go without having resolution in the 18th century? I can see why he would want to jump centuries and get the hell out of the nightmare, but would he really do it? I don't think that's in Roger's character. It looks like he's going to go, but I think he's not going to go. My guess is that Roger is overwhelmed by the possibility, and who wouldn't think of it? He's exhausted. He's being chased by Mohawk. He's been imprisoned. He's been sold. Been almost beat to death. You know, there's a lot of stuff going on for poor Roger. The historian living history kind of sucks and kind of has sucked the whole time for him. It has totally not been awesome like maybe he thought it would be. That would be fun to really find out what Roger thought it would be. It wasn't written. We don't know. So getting to a wrap up of this episode. What did I not cover that was in the summary? I have to find it. Give me a second. I have all these pages of notes. Let's see. Oh, young Ian is smitten. Well, young Ian feels a little bit guilty, obviously, for having a part in her historian disappearing. And he decides to propose to her in the event that they don't bring Roger back. Now, Jamie calls him an Egypt, but it's really sweet. And I did love how Jamie was surprised that cousins aren't smitten with each other in the 20th century. And Brianna saying, it's not encouraged. No, it's not, because we have access to peoples outside of our remote areas, so we don't have to marry our cousins. Absolutely. Which I'm thankful for. I mean, I love my cousins, but I don't love my cousins. I liked also the connection, that bridge between Frank and Jamie, how at home Claire is in the garden and that she could like put roots down right there. And that's what Frank would say. You know, he thought sometimes she'd just leave them both and go out into the woods, which is interesting Because we didn't get to see any part of that Claire. We just saw Claire and the Dr. Claire, Hospital Claire, wound tight Claire. We didn't see Claire in nature at all. So that's an interesting little tidbit for Brianna to share. We got to see how the homestead life thrives. How no matter what happens, everything must go on. The animals need to be tended. The garden needs to be tended. The snares need to be tended. Wood must be chopped. Dinners must be made. Laundry must be done. Like, we just got to see the roots there. There are roots, and that's home. And they have to leave it now for months and have somebody else take care of it. And what about Jamie asking Murtaugh for that favor of going to find Bonnet after he successfully drops off Lizzie and Brianna at River Run so Jamie can kill him? Do you think that's such a great idea? And if they're gone for 4 months-ish, what's he to do? Lock him up and hold him kidnapped? I don't know. That one's an interesting one, and I don't know why Jamie's thinking more secrets and treachery is a good idea at this point. And I did have some interesting thoughts on Jocasta meeting Brianna, because she really wanted Jamie to be her heir and to take over River Run. So, final thoughts here. What consequences will Jamie face over yet another secret, right? I just said that, but it's on my list. Can Claire forgive him for Stephen Bonnet being alive and able to continue to wreak havoc? Is Claire harboring that? Like she harbored them almost getting killed back in season 1 when she went, let's see, after the soldiers came upon them when they were having sexy time in the heather, and she had to kill that soldier? Is she harboring that kind of upset? We don't know. So can she forgive him? How is she going to treat him? Because the look on her face when she had to pull that ring out of her pocket and the way she glared at him and the way that she encircled Brianna tells me that there's some deep anger there that she has not recognized and she has not dealt with, processed, and talked to him about. Can Jamie forgive Claire for not telling him who the rapist is? I mean, they showed it slightly on screen, but not very much. And he was like, wait, well, you should have told me. And she's like, yeah, well, you said you hit a tree. No, I let you believe that. Like, that doesn't go over well. So there's obviously some animosity between the two of them. How's that going to play out? How will Brianna acclimate to River Run? I mean, Claire was there for all of like 2 days. I don't even know what it was. It was a few days. And totally all hell broke loose. And she broke kind of all the rules and made a big spectacle. I mean, is Brianna going to have a little bit more subtlety to her? Not liking the slaves? Not the slaves, but slavery itself. And from the preview, Lord John Grey is there. So I'm really excited for Brianna to meet Lord John Grey. Super, super excited. But how will that play out? If she has to be there, so let's see, by now she's what? Maybe 10 weeks pregnant? So she's getting to the end of first trimester. And if they're going to be gone for 4 months, that puts her at, see, clearly Claire doesn't do math, because if they're going to be gone for, say, 18 weeks, and she's 10 weeks now, that only puts her at third trimester, but maybe it's 4 months one way. Are they really going to be gone for 8 months? I don't think that they're going to be gone that long. But if they have to keep following, like what if they give him to a different tribe and it takes them 6 months? Well, then maybe the baby would be born. But so at the earliest Claire could get back would be when Brianna's in 3rd trimester with some time. The way they're making it sound like she'll be somewhere like 8 months pregnant when Claire gets back, maybe. That's what I'm thinking. That's my guess. That's a long time. If she's 3 months now, almost. Just say 3 months. Say she's 12 weeks. Let's just say that. That's a long time for her to be at River Run. So, again, what will Murtaugh do with Bonnet until Jamie returns? From the preview, he found him. We don't know if he gets away. We don't know what the scoop is. I mean, I'm glad they found something else for Murtaugh to do besides the regulators. At least now he has some kind of functional purpose. He's getting along with the family. Still don't know where he's sleeping. Or Ian, for that matter. He's integrated into the Ridge. He took her to Jocasta. Oh, and what did you think of the interaction between Murtaugh and Jocasta? Like, really? She touches his hands. Oh, I'd remember those hands anywhere. Oh, because of all the gifts and things you handed my sister. So do you think Jocasta maybe had a crush on Murtaugh when she was young? Because she was the baby sister. And it sounds like she was the kind of little sister who, like, followed her siblings around and played spy. That's what it sounds like to me. Scheming Mackenzie. So if the Mohawk catch Roger, which I think they will, and adopt him, who will take his place if they go to get him back? I mean, realistically, can Jamie stay? They have stuff to do on the Ridge. He has responsibilities. And that's a long way to go. And what is Jocasta scheming? You saw how she was feeling Brianna out like she is a prized beast. Oh, my sweet girl. Whatever she said. She said it twice. I'm like, oh, that woman is scheming something fierce. She is coming up with her own plans, and she's looking at the future, especially because she knows Brianna's pregnant. The woman is getting older and needs an heir. She is blind and cannot take care of business herself. So if she doesn't marry, what's the next best thing? Oh, I can't wait to see how that plays out. Interesting. And I wonder how Lizzie is going to integrate into life at River Run. I mean, who is she going to be goo-goo-eyed over there? What kind of trouble is she going to get into? I can only imagine. And I do find it interesting, as a final thought, how in the scheme of all these things, right, that Brianna's anger was vastly placed at Jamie's feet. Like she vomited lava on him. Young Ian bears responsibility in her mind. And really, she told Lizzie that, yes, you should be sorry. But she's not upset at Lizzie, really. Doesn't think that Lizzie really holds any responsibility, which I think is interesting. I certainly would. Because if she would have, I don't know, if she would have had more information, I guess. So this is where Brianna did not clarify to her that there were two men. But Claire told Jamie there were two different men. It was after Roger left that another man took place. But I guess because Jamie had no idea what Roger looked like at all, that he mistook Roger for the man who came to the Ridge for the other man. It's all a big mess. What do you think? Who's responsible? Is everybody responsible? Is nobody responsible? Was it just a big misfortune of events that took place? Yes, it's a plot device and storyline. I totally get that. But what do you think? Like, how do you piece it together in your head that it makes sense? I think I'd be mad at everybody. That's all I'm saying. And now I'm pregnant. I don't know who the father is. And speaking of not knowing who the father was, and Bree ultimately deciding not to have an abortion and to keep the baby and to love the baby no matter what, is Claire having to say yes. Withdrawal method is not a sure thing. And the baby could be Roger's, absolutely. And Bree deciding she was going to open her heart no matter who the baby was from. That was a kind of really beautiful moment. And it really mirrors to me Claire's choice of never even considering it, even though she was going back to a place she didn't want to be, leaving the person she wanted to be with, and going back to a husband who, on some level, she absolutely believed would accept her and want her to be there and raise this baby. Brianna already loved the baby, and there was no going back, no matter what. And for herself, I really liked that. So I really loved this episode. As difficult as it was, it needed to happen. We needed to have an encroachment on resolution. There needed to be honesty and truth and everything out in the open, as terrible as it is. And then Jamie goes and decides to, like, I'm going to have another secret. Because everything can't be out there. So please, I want to hear from you. 719-425-9444 is the listener line. Please leave me a message. It may show up on a future podcast. Or email contact@dramavoutlander.com. That also may be included in a future podcast. And if you happen to listen through YouTube, if you leave comments there, I'll generally say I'm on the podcast as well. Didn't hear from some of the usual listeners this week, so I expect next week there's going to be a lot of comments to come back. And you can find A Dram of Outlander on Twitter and Instagram under Dram of Outlander. Of course, there's the website, adramavoutlander.com. And on Facebook, it's the A Dram of Outlander page, which I basically post things on, and you can interact in my posts. But if you go and join the A Dram of Outlander group, you have to answer a few questions to make sure you're a real person and you actually are an Outlander fan, because it's a private group, so we can keep it virtually moderator free, and we keep really intelligent, awesome discussions. We don't have to agree, and fights don't break out. And over recently, people have been saying that it's the one group that they can go into where there isn't any drama, and you can have intelligent conversation, and you can have good, constructive communication without ever having to agree with the point somebody else makes. All of this material is highly personal. From the books to the TV show, we filter these characters, the material, all through our own experiences, expectations, and filters, just our own life, right? So please come and join in. Those are some of the ways that you can kind of support the podcast and come on board. And the other way is financially, and it's through patreon.com/adramofOutlander. I will be posting more content there, and I'm going to be working on some giveaways and some fun little things. So I would like to be able to give those to you guys. And I hope that those of you who took advantage of the discount for the recent convention in New Orleans, I hope you had a great time, and I would love to hear how that went. And thank you so much for listening. It's amazing, and it feels really special to me because I'm the only single podcaster. Everybody has a partner but me. And I really appreciate you listening to what I have to say. I know that it's not as fun, and I don't have the back and forth. Sometimes with myself I do. I am a Gemini, I can't be two personalities in one space. But I really appreciate you sticking with me and really giving me your feedback. I always want it. I want constructive criticism of what I'm doing. I want your input. I want your thoughts, your comments, your questions. Because we all love this material. We all love these characters, whether you watch the show and don't read the books like my husband. He looks forward to it every week. And he really enjoys them. Or if you're tied to the books as well and need to really process through, again, what you're seeing versus what you want to see. And it's not the same because we all interpret the material differently. And I'm just really appreciating how the writers have honed in on the spirit of things. And it isn't about not making changes. It's about having something come to life off the page and putting it into a format that we can look at and go, oh, there you are. I've been waiting for you. I'm so glad to see you, my friend. And that's really, I think, what all of us want. So if you do feel led to financially support the podcast, I appreciate you greatly. And if you want to make a one-time offering, you can drop me an email at contact@adramaofoutlander.com, or I'll leave a voicemail at the 719-425-9444, and we can talk about how to do that. So I'm really looking forward to next week. Again, we're down to 3 episodes. The humanity! 3 episodes. We're going to make it. And then we're going to start the fiery cross right away. Who's with me? Come on, you can do it. It's totally worth it. All right. Well, as always, thank you for listening. And until next time, slán je va.